The diplomatic hall stretched before Marcus like a cathedral of glass and steel, its vaulted ceiling catching the light of 3 suns through crystalline panels. He stood alone near the observation window, deliberately separated from the cluster of human ambassadors who whispered among themselves at the far end of the chamber. They had made their position clear during the shuttle ride to the orbital station. Stay away from the Velthari delegation. Do not make eye contact with their queen. Under no circumstances should he approach her or respond if she addressed him. The warnings came with barely concealed disgust, as though proximity to the alien monarch carried some contagion. Marcus understood why. The Velthari had crushed 3 human colonies in the outer rim before anyone realized they possessed faster-than-light capability. Their ships had appeared without warning, their weapons reducing fortified settlements to ash in moments. Then, just as suddenly, they had sued for peace. No explanation, no apology, just a formal request for negotiation. The human delegation had arrived expecting treachery. What they found instead was a civilization that valued ritual and formality above all else. The Velthari wanted trade agreements, cultural exchange, mutual defense pacts. They wanted to talk about art and philosophy and the nature of consciousness across species. They wanted everything except to discuss why they had killed 2,000 humans. "She is a monster," Ambassador Wright had said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "She personally led the assault on New Haven. We have the tactical recordings. Her flagship fired the shot that destroyed the civilian shelters." Marcus had nodded, keeping his expression neutral. He was not a diplomat. He was an anthropologist, brought along because someone thought his expertise in first contact protocols might prove useful. Nobody asked his opinion on policy. Nobody wanted to hear his observations about Velthari, social structures, or the religious significance of their territorial expansion. So he stood alone, watching the light shift across the station's exterior hull, and tried not to think about the faces he had seen in the casualty reports from New Haven. The door at the far end of the hall opened with a whisper of pressurized air. The Velthari delegation entered in single file, their movements synchronized with an unsettling grace. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in interlocking plates that resembled polished obsidian. Bioluminescent patterns flickered beneath the surface of their armor, pulsing in rhythms that Marcus recognized as a form of silent communication. The queen entered last. She wore no crown, no regalia that distinguished her from her companions, except for the deep crimson hue of her plating and the complex geometric patterns that glowed across her torso. Her eyes, 4 of them arranged in a diamond pattern on her elongated skull, swept across the chamber with predatory focus. Marcus felt her gaze pause on him. He looked away, remembering the warnings, and focused instead on the intricate floor tiles beneath his feet. The formal greetings began. Ambassador Wright stepped forward, her translator device rendering her words into the harmonic tones of Velthari speech. The queen responded, her voice resonating through the chamber like a cello played in a cave. They spoke of peace, of cooperation, of the bright future that awaited both species, if only they could set aside past conflicts. It was all performance. Marcus could see the tension in Wright's shoulders, the way her fingers curled into fists when she thought nobody was watching. The other ambassadors stood rigid, their faces carefully blank. They hated being here. They hated every moment of diplomatic courtesy that kept them from demanding justice for the dead. The Velthari seemed unbothered by the hostility. Their bioluminescent patterns pulsed in what Marcus had learned to recognize as contentment. They believed the negotiations were proceeding well. After an hour of formal speeches, the delegation broke for refreshments. The humans clustered together on one side of the hall. The Velthari gathered on the other. Marcus remained by the window, nursing a cup of station coffee that tasted like recycled cardboard. He sensed her approach before he saw her. The air seemed to grow heavier, charged with something that made the hair on his arms stand upright. He turned slowly, keeping his expression neutral, and found the Velthary Queen standing less than 3 feet away. Up close, she was magnificent. The crimson plating caught the light and fractured it into 1,000 subtle shades. The patterns beneath her armor pulsed in complex sequences that he suspected carried meaning far beyond simple emotion. Her eyes, each one larger than his fist, studied him with an intelligence that was utterly alien and completely recognizable. "You stand apart from your kind," she said. Her translator rendered the words in a feminine voice that somehow matched the harmonics of her natural speech. "They gather together for comfort. You do not." Marcus glanced toward the human delegation. Every eye was locked on him, wide with horror. Ambassador Wright made a sharp cutting motion across her throat. The message was clear. End this conversation. Walk away. He looked back at the Queen. I think more clearly with some distance. You are the one they call the observer. The one who watches and records, but does not participate in decisions. Anthropologist? Yes. We have a similar role in our culture. Those who stand between, who translate the unfamiliar into concepts that others can understand. She tilted her head, and the gesture was so human, despite her alien features, that Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. It is a lonely position, sometimes. The Queen moved past him to the window, her movements fluid despite her size. She stood close enough that he could have reached out and touched her plating, close enough that he could see the faint scars that marked the leading edges of her armor. "Your companions fear me," she said, her voice dropping lower. "They believe I am a creature of violence, a destroyer of worlds." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say that would not be either a lie or an insult. "They are correct," the Queen continued. "I led the fleets that burned your colonies. I gave the orders. I watched your cities fall and felt satisfaction at the precision of our strikes." The human delegation was moving now, Wright striding across the hall with murder in her eyes. 2 security officers flanked her, their hands resting on holstered weapons. They would not start a firefight in the diplomatic hall, but they would damn well remove him from the Queen's presence. Why? Marcus asked before they could reach him. The single word hung in the air between them. The Queen's patterns flashed through a sequence of colors he had never seen before. "Because we did not understand that you were people." Wright arrived, her face flushed with anger. "Captain Carter, step away from her immediately." Marcus raised one hand. "Ambassador, I believe the Queen is trying to explain something. I don't care what she's trying to do. This conversation is over." The Queen turned to face Wright, and despite the ambassador's considerable courage, she took an involuntary step backward. "Your customs fascinate us," the Queen said. "You segregate your people by role and function, yet you expect unity of purpose. You express hostility through body language and tone, then hide behind words of diplomacy. You are a species of contradictions." "We're a species you tried to exterminate," Wright shot back. "No. We eliminated threats to our territorial expansion. We destroyed military installations and infrastructure. We did not recognize that behind those installations were individuals with consciousness, with families, with art and dreams, and everything that makes a people worthy of existence. That's convenient. You kill 2,000 of us, and then claim ignorance?" The Queen's patterns shifted to something that Marcus instinctively recognized as grief. "We are a young species on the galactic stage. We achieved faster-than-light travel through accident, not design. We had never encountered another intelligent race. When your ships appeared in what we considered our territory, we responded as we would to an invasive predator. We eliminated the threat with maximum efficiency. And when did you figure out you were wrong?" Wright's voice dripped with sarcasm. "When we intercepted your communications? When we decoded your languages and heard the voices of those who mourned the dead. When we understood that you had names for your fallen, that you created memorials, that you sang songs of loss, the Queen's patterns flickered like a candle in wind. We recognized ourselves in your grief, and we understood what we had done. The hall had gone silent. Even the other Velthari had stopped their quiet conversations. Everyone watched the confrontation unfold. Wright opened her mouth to respond, but Marcus spoke first. Is that why you sued for peace? Because you realized you had committed genocide. We sued for peace because we had committed a sin against consciousness itself. We ended lives that should have flourished. We silenced voices that should have sung. We cannot undo what we have done, but we can ensure it never happens again. Pretty words, Wright said. But words don't bring back the dead. No, the Queen agreed. Nothing can do that. But perhaps understanding can prevent future deaths. Perhaps communication can replace conflict. She turned back to Marcus, and something in her posture changed. She lowered herself, folding her legs beneath her until she sat on the floor. The position left her still taller than Marcus, but it was a clear gesture of submission, of vulnerability. You stand apart from your kind because you see what they cannot, she said. You observe without immediate judgment. You seek to understand before condemning. This is why I chose to approach you. This is why I sit beside you now, despite the protocols and warnings. Marcus slowly lowered himself to sit cross-legged on the floor. Behind him, he heard Wright's sharp intake of breath. This was a violation of diplomatic protocol, a breach of carefully negotiated rules of engagement. He did not care. What do you want from me? He asked. Tell them our truth. Tell them that we are not monsters who kill for pleasure, but fools who killed from ignorance. Tell them that we grieve for what we have done. Tell them that we would offer anything, accept any penance, if only they would help us understand how to be better. They won't believe me. Perhaps not. But you are the observer. Your words carry weight precisely because you do not seek to shape policy. You only seek to record truth. Marcus looked at the Queen, really looked at her. He saw the weight she carried in the slope of her shoulders, the exhaustion in the dimming of her patterns. She was not a monster. She was a person who had done monstrous things and would carry that burden for the rest of her life. I'll tell them, he said quietly. I don't know if it will change anything. Change begins with a single voice speaking truth to those who do not wish to hear it. The Queen rose smoothly to her feet. Thank you, observer, for sitting with me, for listening. She walked back to her delegation, her head held high despite the condemnation in every human eye. Marcus remained on the floor, aware that his career was probably over, that he would face censure and possibly criminal charges for violating protocol. Wright loomed over him, her face a mask of controlled fury. What the hell were you thinking? Marcus climbed to his feet, his knees protesting the movement. I was thinking that maybe understanding is more important than hatred. That maybe the hardest thing we can do is recognize the humanity in those who have hurt us. She's not human. No, but she's a person. And persons can change. Persons can learn. Persons can regret. He met Wright's glare without flinching. We can spend the rest of our lives hating them for what they did, or we can try to build something better. I know which future I want. Wright's expression softened slightly. You're an idealistic fool, Carter. Probably. But someone has to be. The negotiations continued for another 3 days. Marcus was officially reprimanded and removed from the delegation. He spent his time in his quarters, writing his observations, documenting everything he had learned about Velthari culture and psychology. He wrote about grief and recognition, about the terrible cost of ignorance, about the possibility of redemption. On the final day, as the human delegation prepared to depart, Marcus found a small package outside his door. Inside was a crystalline sculpture, no larger than his thumb. When he held it up to the light, he saw patterns frozen inside the crystal, complex geometric shapes that pulsed with their own inner luminescence. A note accompanied the gift, written in careful English. For the observer who sits beside strangers, may your truth be heard. It was unsigned, but Marcus knew who had sent it. He held the crystal carefully, feeling the weight of it in his palm, and wondered if understanding would ever be enough to balance the scales of justice. Perhaps not, but it was a beginning.